Hello, everyone, and welcome to a very, very special guest appearance on the LFC Transfer Room podcast. I'm joined by Joon Lee from ESPN across the pond in America, and he is a journalist for the Boston Red Sox. He is also a Liverpool fan, which is double the pain for him right now. Joon, how are you doing, mate?
Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to do this. I've been looking forward to it.
Are you optimistic about Boston the way you are with Liverpool at the moment?
I'm much more optimistic about Liverpool, despite like how awful and up and down the season has been. Just because I think Liverpool just has like a baseline roster that's just so much stronger than the Red Sox this year. Like when I have a lot of friends who are both Red Sox fans and Liverpool fans over in Boston, which is where I grew up, and I think everyone on the whole is much more excited about just the potential of what could happen with Liverpool moving forward. Like, if you've seen Darwin, I think pick things up over the course of the last couple of months, and everyone's buzzing about Jude Bellingham and all that stuff. So I think there's just generally more excitement that things could happen on the Liverpool side than the Red Sox side right now.
There is glimpses, isn't there, of a promise, hope in future with Liverpool. With, like you said, Darwin Núñez, the Jude Bellingham stuff that seems to be heating up at the moment. The Jude Bellingham thing. So let's go on to the both clubs respectively. Boston Red Sox and Liverpool are owned by a certain Fenway Sports Group. At the head of that is John W. Henry. First of all, as a Boston Red Sox fan, how is he being perceived right now over there?
I would say it's as bad as it's ever been. And the thing with Henry is that it's really weird because I think most fans of baseball teams and sports teams in general in America would kill to have an owner like John Henry, who, over the course of his time owning the Red Sox, has helped bring the franchise 4 World Series titles. Especially when he came over, the Red Sox hadn't won a World Series in 86 years. It was the curse of the Bambino. They traded Babe Ruth in the early 1918, and they hadn't won a World Series for 86 years, and so he helped break that curse. So in theory, you would imagine that buys a lot of leeway and just flexibility. But I think because Red Sox fans and Boston sports fans as a whole are so competitive, people are starting to get really short with him. And I think it really all starts with the trade of Mookie Betts dating back to the end of 2019. I guess the best soccer comparison that I would have, I think it kind of paralleled to the negotiations that Liverpool had with Mo Salah last year. And I would say that Mookie was a similar type of figure within the Red Sox fan base, except for the fact that Mookie was a homegrown guy. So there was this kind of extra level of attachment that Red Sox fans had to him, and he helped them win a World Series. And he kind of turned into this like generational icon among his kind of age group of players in the baseball world. And the Red Sox, they had this general manager, Dave Dombrowski, who his philosophy for a long time was just pay whatever it took to get the best players in the market. Don't care about the farm system. Trade away your best prospects in order to get some of the best players on the open market, and prioritize the short term over the long term. And as a result, the Red Sox got to a point where within the financial system of baseball, the luxury tax, which is basically, it's not a hard salary cap, but if you exceed it, you're going to get taxed really, really heavily. So these owners are really cognizant of where the luxury tax is, because if you get over that threshold, especially for multiple years, you're going to get taxed really heavily. And at that point in 2019, the Red Sox had gone over the luxury tax for multiple seasons. They won the World Series in 2018, but in 2019, they fired their general manager, Dave Dombrowski, because they fell back to last place or close to it, and they missed the playoffs after winning the World Series. And they were in a spot where the financials of the organization had kind of been screwed. And so they brought a new general manager, Chaim Bloom, who came from Tampa Bay, which was a very analytics-heavy, small market organization. Chaim is one of probably the smartest people in baseball. I mean, he had been really good at helping the Rays maximize every single dollar that they had. Yeah, so Chaim Bloom, you got hired by the Red Sox to kind of maximize the money, and his first move as a result of kind of the financial state the Red Sox were in was to trade Mookie. And since then, the Red Sox fan base has been pretty mad at John Henry and ownership and at Chaim Bloom for trading Mookie, because he's this generational icon that was developed in Boston, and people wanted to see him play in Boston for the rest of his career. Now Mookie was in a situation where he wanted to set the market. He wanted to be one of the highest paid players in baseball, and he wasn't going to give Boston a hometown discount. And the Red Sox from my sources have convinced themselves at this point that Mookie is never going to sign in Boston. Mookie himself and other people around Mookie have told me that that's not true. He just wanted to maximize the money that he wanted to make. And so they ended up trading to the Dodgers. And the pandemic happened, and Mookie signed an extension with the Dodgers that seemed pretty reasonable for the market. And so as a result, there's kind of been this cascading effect over the course of the last couple of years where this Mookie trade has loomed over the entire Red Sox fan base. And as a result, we've seen the team be in last place in 2020. They made a surprise run to basically the semifinals in 2021. And in 2022, they fell back to last place again. And this past offseason, they let a second homegrown franchise star, Xander Bogaerts, leave because they mishandled those negotiations. Xander, much more than Mookie, was very insistent on trying to stay in Boston because he has more of an emotional attachment to the organization than Mookie did, and was willing to sign a contract last year that was probably a tick below market value, but kind of would have given him a bigger raise. What the Red Sox did instead was they went outside another free agent, shortstop, to a contract that Xander probably would have signed for last season, and in turn made Xander mad and kind of ruined those negotiations as a whole. So over the course of the last 4 years, the Red Sox have taken two of the best homegrown stars that they've developed in the franchise's history, completely alienated them for financial reasons and traded them or let them walk in free agency and got nothing back in return. And as a result, the city of Boston is kind of lacking this connection to this group of Red Sox right now, where you have a lot of guys over the course of the last couple of years. There's been a ton of roster turnover, and you have a lot of guys who are on 1-2 years deals. And the front office, Chaim is trying to sell this vision of we have a farm system coming. We're going to have a lot more homegrown guys coming. It's going to be better on the paycheck, and we're going to have like a lot of young talent that is cheap, that is going to be able to sustain our success for a long time. But the patience is starting to wear thin because Red Sox fans, I think similar to Liverpool fans, the standard is so high on a year-to-year basis that if you have 2 out of 3 years where you're out of the playoffs, like it's completely unacceptable. And so Chaim has this kind of long-term vision for building out the Red Sox sustainably over the long term. And the question that a lot of Red Sox fans have now is John Henry going to have the patience, given the backlash from the fan base, to let Chaim continue on with this like long-term vision? And so there's kind of this like kind of back and forth where I think the questions around this Red Sox season really center around John Henry. I think are a lot of the questions that Liverpool fans are asking themselves about John Henry right now, where do you care about the community of this team? The fact that you are, developing guys that, this is an entertainment product as well, where people want to come to the ballpark to see these stars. Like, is that something that you care about? Having these like long-term stars that have faced the franchise, or do you only care about, obviously winning is important, but making as much profit as possible? Because the Red Sox, despite being in last place last year, were the most profitable team in baseball because they own their own regional sports network that broadcasts the games. Like, there's a lot of business aspects to this too that are interesting. And so there's just a lot of questions centered on John Henry this year, asking like, how patient are you going to be with a really angry fan base that has been really fed up with the team not spending money in the way that they have in the past? Because over the course of the Red Sox's tenure, the Red Sox have averaged probably second or third highest payroll in baseball behind the Yankees, sometimes the Dodgers. And this year, they're kind of in the middle of the pack because a lot of the teams have decided to go way over the luxury tax to try to win this year. And the Red Sox have taken a step back. And it's kind of the first time in the Henry's ownership tenure where they're not remotely close to the highest spending team in baseball. And so there's a lot of questions, I think, from a lot of different angles that Red Sox fans are throwing at John Henry right now.
There are so many similarities between Liverpool and Boston. I think you'll know it more than anyone because you're a fan of both. And you see it within the ownership model and the way both teams have come up from the ashes, not won obviously you said, was it an 89-year series where you haven't won a series? Liverpool won the league in 30 years and come up to the top, won the league, and then we seem to be crashing back down again. And again, it come down to finances of John Henry. We saw, I think it was last month, where John Henry faced the Boston Red Sox fans. I've never, ever seen him over here at Liverpool, which is something I'd be very interested in turning up to, if I'm honest. But yeah, and he suffered a lot of, I won't say abuse, but he suffered a lot of boos. And when he was asked about the players, he said, sports players are expensive out there. And I don't know about you, June, but when you come into a sports business and if you're going to own a sports company such as the Boston Red Sox and Liverpool Football Club, who are massive big brands, big franchises in themselves, if you want to call it, he should be expected to know about the sport. He should be expected to know salaries. He should be expected to know the transfer fees. You know, football is increasing in terms of financially, is increasing every year in, year out. The financial fees for players and wages alone are just exceeding anything beyond imagination to what there was in the 90s and the 2000s. Should he expect these sort of finances being thrown around in such big sports and big clubs as well? And can he use that as the excuse when it comes to buying players?
I think there's a multifaceted business answer to this, because like one of the things that baseball in particular has been dealing with is that a lot of teams haven't been competitive over the course of the last decade because they've been tanking, because they want to kind of have a bunch of cheap homegrown players that they develop in the farm system to try to win a World Series and try to maximize profits. And I think that one of the reasons why a lot of these smaller market teams have gotten that criticism is because abstractly, like, these franchise valuations are continuing to go up. Like, even the smallest market teams in baseball are worth $1 billion now. And John Henry is, I think I tweeted at some point, has made 500 times the value of what he paid for the Red Sox now and what they're worth. But that's not necessarily like hard liquid money that he has, which is kind of the excuse that a lot of these owners give. Like, yes, the franchise valuation has gone up to $4 billion or whatever it is, but we don't have that $4 billion on hand. And my pushback to that is that you can use that valuation from Forbes or from an independent source and use that to take more money out from the bank as a loan. Because these franchise valuations are continuing to grow up. And so a lot of these owners, and I think John Henry started to take this approach, not just in baseball, but across a lot of the franchises that he owns, is that he's trying to maximize profits on a year-to-year basis while also knowing abstractly that the franchise valuations are going to continue to go up, especially as we enter this like global sports world where it's much easier for me in America now than it was 15 years ago to follow Liverpool. Like, all the games are on NBC. I can get them on streaming service. Like, I can follow the news on LFC Transfer Room about Liverpool, even though I don't live in the UK. Like, it's just so much easier for me to do that. If you want to be a baseball fan in the UK, like, you can follow the Red Sox much more easily now than you ever could before. And so as we head into this global sports world, the valuations are going to continue to go up. And I think that like there's this level of, I think for Red Sox fans in particular, the way that Henry's approached things over the course of the last couple of years, he bought the franchise at a time, and I think this is very similar to what has happened at Liverpool, where the fan base felt very vulnerable because we hadn't won a franchise, a World Series, a championship in 86 years. And he came in and fulfilled all of our dreams as fans. He won a championship. And he built his entire sports franchise conglomerate, FSG, on the foundation of, hey, we turned the Red Sox around. They hadn't won a championship in 86 years. We invested money. We transformed Fenway Park. We revitalized the neighborhood around Fenway Park. We can come do that for Liverpool. We can come do that for Roush Fenway Racing, which they did for a long time. We're going to do that for the Pittsburgh Penguins. We're going to do that in Las Vegas with LeBron James for an NBA franchise. It is the foundation of everything that he's built from as a businessman from a sports business perspective. And now Red Sox fans, I think, are feeling a little bit betrayed because there's this, like, we're starting to feel kind of the cold corporate side to all of this, where I think Red Sox fans feel very used in kind of John Henry's pursuit of this like sports franchise conglomerate empire, where he used our story and our vulnerability and wanting a championship so badly to leverage that into giving himself more negotiating power in being able to go out and get a team like Liverpool, build up his personal wealth, and then leveraging the success of Liverpool to go buy the Pittsburgh Penguins or any other franchise that might come after this. And so I think there's a level of like people feeling used, and us. I think Red Sox fans and I think Liverpool fans have been feeling a similar thing where, like, were we just kind of pawns in your sports franchise empire and your first conglomerate empire, or did you actually care about like fostering a community around this? Because they've been saying for years we care about the community, but when I talk to my government sources, my local government sources in Boston, Henry's the least involved in local charity stuff, just being involved in the community. All that stuff is tied together. And so I think people in the Boston community, not just among sports fans, but even in local government, being like, what was really your motive in all of this? Like, were we just pawns in your kind of like big scheme here? And I think that that's one of the reasons why there's been so much pressure on him, both from the Liverpool side and the Fenway side, the Red Sox side, to be like, hey, you said for years that you cared about this team as a community. Now you kind of have to show it, you know? And I think that that's one of the reasons why there is so much pressure on Chaim Bloom this year for the team to win, because if they don't win, he's a very easy scapegoat for John Henry to be like, see, I fired Chaim. Like, I still care about you guys. I still care about spending money here. And so it's a very interesting crossroads, I think, Henry is at with this team that I think is very similar to the situation that's happening over with Liverpool right now.
His actions certainly do speak louder than words, if I'm honest. You hit the nail on the head there with the community thing. And if over in Boston you're feeling like he's not doing, he lives over there with you, so he's going to have that more sort of connection with you guys over there than he is with over us. But if he's not involved in the community over there, then what's he going to do over here? If we're seen as that sort of not second child sort of thing. And like you said, he's sort of used these clubs as like the springboard for his whole franchise as a whole. And his Pittsburgh Penguins are on the run. Again, he's looking to get an NBA. Are we pawns in his chess game? And he's still searching to increase his value elsewhere. Because when he's doing that as well, he's not focused on those certain things. You go to a restaurant, you want a menu to be small because you want it to cook it properly. And when the menu is small, they're going to focus on their specific meals, if that makes sense. And if you go to a restaurant that's got a big menu, then this is where people get food poisoning because you're not doing the cooking properly. They're so rushed off their feet trying to do different things. And this is why we feel inadequate as fans of Liverpool, fans of Boston, because does he really care about the club as a whole? He says when he came in, he said he cared about it. He said he wanted to win. We don't see him at Liverpool. We don't see him coming over here. It's like one every season, and that's towards the end of the season just to make sure his finances are looking good. And so where do we go from there? How looking at it as a whole, as Boston fans, do you think you can get Henry out? Or are you wanting Henry out and to move on to a new ownership, or what are you thinking about that?
It's something I feel so conflicted about because Henry has brought so many championships to Boston, more so than any other owner has in a really long time. He helped transform the city into kind of title town USA. And you look at the rest of the owners across sports, yes, there's so many things to complain about with John Henry, but there's a lot worse out there. Like, I look at a situation like the Miami Marlins, and they've basically taken the strategy that Henry has done to an extreme where they barely care about winning on a year-to-year basis. They've won 2 World Series since the 1990s, and the year after they won the World Series, they've traded away everybody. So, like, the fan base has felt betrayed in Miami multiple times because the franchise has traded away immediately any franchise star that they deemed valuable because they won the World Series before. And so, and Henry was obviously the owner in Florida before Jeffrey Loria. That was kind of how he got his start before coming to the Red Sox. And so I see the situation where I look at Miami, I'm just like, John Henry, as awful as the situation is, and how as frustrating as it is as a fan who roots for a team that holds itself to such a high standard like the Boston Red Sox does, there's not many other owners in baseball that I would take him, like I would take over him. And so it's kind of like it's the question of like, are you doing a deal with the devil that you know? Or the
catch-22, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a catch-22, yeah.
Like, I think maybe just because by making a deal with John Henry in the first place, by selling this team to Henry in the first place, like, maybe this was inevitable. Like, maybe this is just the flip side to having the curse broken for the 86-year championship job. Maybe this is just the flip side to that, is like having to deal with this like awful corporate thing, um, and so I feel conflicted about it all the time because Henry doesn't talk to the media. He hasn't talked to the media in years. And when he had, the thing is, when he did talk to the Red Sox media, he would always put his foot in his mouth, which is why they don't trot him out there anymore. And so it's one of those things where it's just like, do I put up with this now? Because like, I'd rather John Henry does spend money on the team relative to other owners, and like there has been success here. But like, you look at the Yankees, the Yankees are owned by the Steinbrenner family. There's been accusations of them spending less money in recent years for similar reasons, but it hasn't been to the degree that the Red Sox have done it. And they went out this offseason to re-sign Aaron Judge to a massive, record franchise-setting contract extension, and they have continued to spend a lot of money there. And so maybe it's just like all ownership groups you're going to have frustrations with. Like, there's no perfect situation for anyone, because like I don't know if you're I don't know. I did a profile on Mbappe a couple of years ago, and I went over to PSG. Like, I know a lot of PSG fans have a lot of conflicted feelings about their ownership group and the ethics and how they're able to afford Neymar, Mbappe, and Messi at the same time, and John Luigi Donnarumma and all these other guys. Like, there's so many ethical questions that I would have if your team is being funded by oil money to that degree, and like we're seeing oil money pour into soccer over the course of the last couple of years. Would you rather be frustrated with John Henry, who's made his money off of building up sports franchises, and have less of the ethical questions of the energy money that's being poured into soccer, or would you rather completely ignore that? I guess could try to compartmentalize the energy money aspect of of some of these soccer teams being funded, but also be like Man City and get Holland and be able to afford all the top stars in the world. Like, this might just be the questions that we have to ask ourselves as we head into this like global sports world, as we have more international interests, coming in from outside the country to fund our sports. It's something that I like have a lot of moral quandaries about all the time.
It really is a catch-22 because he's stuck in a rock and a hard place at the moment, and to get out of it, you just want someone to come in, not sort of with the same sort of mind as Henry in terms of just wanting to be clean, wanting to be sustainable, but then we still need that money being dipped in every now and then. For Jurgen Klopp is struggling at the moment. Liverpool are struggling at the moment. You've probably seen it with Boston. It seems to be just we're keeping the same players every single year. He seems to be having to work miracles every year. And for a manager like Jurgen Klopp, the best manager we've had since like Paisley and Shankly, I feel like it's been a wasted opportunity with him, and we could have had possibly a legacy, an era for the ages to challenge the likes of Pep, to challenge the likes of Alex Ferguson, to challenge the likes of Jose Mourinho. But he hasn't been able to do that because of the holding back of finances in terms of squad anyway. Finances have gone on other things. You've got the fourth highest wage bill in the country. People say, that's what's killing our transfer fees. But who's paying the wages? You can't blame anyone else. But
yeah,
paying the wages. Exactly.
100%. And like, I feel like someone like as much as someone like James Milner has done for Liverpool, like that guy is old, right? He's really old. And like the fact that Liverpool and Jurgen are so dependent on James Milner, like at his age, like it's one of those things where it's just like, you're Liverpool. You should be able to like, give James Milner his great goodbye that he deserves. But you should be able to upgrade that position at this point, and they've been depending on James Milner for multiple years now. And I feel like he's just barely holding on by a thread at this point.
if that. I mean, it's probably like a year off his pension at the moment over here. But yeah, it's so frustrating. It's 2023, right? Man City got rid of James Milner years ago because he was too old, and it's 2023 and we're still having to rely on him on the pitch. I don't mind him being in the squad and then around the training ground for the younger players to be maybe part of the coaching role in a year's time, but he should not be playing on that pitch, not at 37.
Right.
So this is the problem, with but then they put it down to finances, saying, where do you want the money from? We're not an oil. This is what Ian Klopp comes out in press conferences. We ain't got the money of Man City. It's not about the money of Man City. These Liverpool fans are frustrated. Our net spend is, I think it's a 9th in the last five years, 9th in the league. The likes of Aston Villa are above us in net spend. The likes of Wolverhampton Wanderers, who are near the bottom net spend. West Ham are above us, who are just come out of the relegation free, above us in net spend. It's those sort of statistics that make you question where is this money going that we're earning? Because we had a club record revenue coming in last month, 2 months ago in February. We took over Man United in revenue, with the third highest revenue football club in the world behind Barcelona and Real Madrid. So where is this money going? Because it's not going on players, because we're behind in terms of net spend. Net spend is what you sell and what you bring in. The whole amount of income and outcome together, that is net spend. So to be behind the likes of West Ham and Wolves and Villa, that's not an excuse. Money should be.
You're Liverpool. You shouldn't be among those teams.
Exactly that. People forget that we're a football club. The most successful club in England. Built on success, built this foundation. We're not skin. We're acting like someone from National League. Yes, they saved us from administration when they came in 12 and a half years ago. We're on the brink of administration, and no, they're not worse than Hicks and Gillette. They were the worst owners I've ever seen run this club, and probably the worst owners I've seen in the league. But it doesn't mean that this ownership is right, just because they're not worse than the ones before. It's completely contradicting everything. I always use this analogy of Andy Carroll and Andre Voronin. Andre Voronin was a awful player for Liverpool, but doesn't mean Andy Carroll was a good signing because he was better than Andre Voronin. Does that make sense? He's still an awful signing for Liverpool Football Club. So we can't. You got to compare to other clubs. Win a sporting sort of basis, comparing owners. As a kid, I never thought about the ownership of football. For me, as a football fan, you should be, or a baseball fan, you should be worried what's going on the pitch, and are you delivering on the pitch, and are you delivering trophies on the pitch? And we've had an opportunity with this group of players and this manager to create something. I know we've won every trophy, but we've won it once. We've won the league once. We've won the Champions League once. They should have won way more. I know we're against a financial sort of doping sort of thing with Man City, but if Liverpool had spent that extra bit of money every window, extra 1 or 2 players, that's all we're asking, 1 or 2 players extra window, I think we would have won way more. And we wouldn't be relying on this summer, by the way, for a rebuild. Because we're heavy reliant now on this summer coming up for a complete reshuffle. And this wouldn't have happened if we addressed these sort of situations in previous windows. You're leaving yourself in a situation where you got to spend more than you can bite off, and it is frustrating. Like you said, it's a catch-22. Again, like Boston, they've come in here and they've won us a league title the first time in 30 years, exactly like Boston. And the similarities. I've spoken to a Boston fan before about all this, and the similarities between the both clubs is ridiculous, even down to the players. Like you mentioned.
Well, I was going to say between the. I was going to say too, between the cities as well. I think that Boston, as a native Bostonian myself, there's as much as a lot of people in Boston will like to admit, there's always just there's the rival with New York. It's always something that's on your mind when you're in New York. And I know that Liverpool's an hour and a half outside of London on a train. There is a similar we are in the shadow of
Manchester's our rival, which is just down the road, Manchester.
And so you're just always kind of in the shadow of the bigger team in the bigger city as a whole, And so it's one of those things where it's it's like if you went into a corporate boardroom and you were trying to plan out, how do I build out a sports conglomerate where you're going in to buy high value franchises that you can actually purchase, right? If you're making the parallel between Manchester United and the Yankees, Liverpool in theory and the Red Sox are kind of that next step below, but are still way more valuable than every other franchise in their respective leagues. The dynamics around the community and the team are very similar. and it's there's just so many parallels that I think are so interesting. And I think it's the reason why a lot of Red Sox fans gravitate towards Liverpool because, like, I think people don't want to root for people don't want to root for like Manchester United. Like,
you feel the same pain that we are, yeah. You're feeling the same pain.
yeah, like
we are.
a lot of my friends growing up, when we were like soccer was starting to become a bigger thing, or football was starting to become a bigger thing in the United States, especially for I'm 27, around people my age. People didn't want to root for Manchester United because like it didn't feel within the ethos of like Boston sports fans to root for Manchester United, you know?
The similarities are ridiculous. I mean, you talked about the player earlier about leaving Boston, and it's sort of like the Mane situation where Mane wanted to stay for high wages, and they said no, we can only pay Salah the high wages. We have the money to pay both, but they had to let one go because they just don't want to pay that sort of money. And I'm not saying Mane is a big miss this season because he did drop off a little bit, but still, it shouldn't have to be like that. We should, if we want to keep someone and Klopp wants to keep someone, then they should be like, there you go, there's the money. If Klopp wants to go out and get someone, i.e. Jude Bellingham, there shouldn't even be any second guesses. And the sheer fact that they're already using excuses of, well, if we don't get Bellingham, it's because we ain't got Champions League football this season. The reason why we're not going to get Champions League football is because you've neglected us for the last 2, 3, 4 years in the windows. I think it was after the winning the Champions League or the league. John Henry actually came out, and I think a reporter spotted him in the car park and asked him about, do Liverpool go again? And I said, yeah, we're going again. We're going to go try to win the league, try to win the Champions League again. We're going to go out spending good in the transfer window. And the transfer window after that, we bought like Harvey Elliott and Seth Vandenberg, 2 youngsters. So it's like, I said earlier, his actions speak louder than his words. And he may come out and apologise for the Super League thing, the European Super League thing, but he's still not rectified anything. He came out and apologised for the ticket prices going up. Again, this season, the tickets are going up, only just recently. So you can't keep apologising and going against your word with your actions. I think it is put up or shut up this summer, if I'm honest, with John Henry. And I think those that have been FSG in at Liverpool, they're on their last straw this summer, I believe. Is that sort of reminiscing over in Boston as well with fans? Are there still fans that believe that FSG are the right ownership?
I think people are just really conflicted about it. And I think it's I think the European Super League thing is actually very emblematic of Henry's approach with all of this, because I think he's thinking like the world is getting smaller, and when you play FIFA online, when I play FIFA online, like it's like people are using the same hand, like 6 or 7 teams, right? And I think people, if you're like a billionaire owner who's not thinking about the community at all and just trying to maximize the money internationally, it would be great for the sport from a financial standpoint, not necessarily from like a legacy, building off of what's already established. But if you're just thinking about it from a pure cold business standpoint, having Barcelona, Real Madrid, like Liverpool, Man U, Man City, like all those Super League teams that are the only teams that people play with on FIFA online, like that's the ideal way to maximize the amount of money that the sport can make. And I think that is very emblematic of the mindset that he has towards owning sports teams. Is we should just be trying to maximize everything, and like, maybe you appease the fans every once in a while when they get mad enough, but we're going to continue moving forward with our plans here. And so maybe it's like a 1 step forward, 2 steps back type of thing. But that 1 step forward, 2 steps back approach has led him to this point where he's the favorite to, alongside LeBron James, owning an NBA franchise in Las Vegas whenever that eventually happens. It's the reason why he's able to afford the Pittsburgh Penguins now. It's the reason why with the Red Sox he was able to afford Liverpool and Roush Fenway Racing, and so he has taken this take a step forward, maybe make a mistake, and then take 2 steps back approach many times before. And he's continued to do that now. And I don't see any reason why that's going to change. And I think the question that you have to ask yourself as like a Red Sox fan and a Liverpool fan, as like a sports fan as a whole, is like, there's a lot of questions around just like oligopolies in the United States with the tech industry and all that stuff. Like, there's going to come a point where like there's a chance that like many of the most powerful sports teams across many leagues, like John Henry's not going to be the first. He's providing a blueprint for all these other billionaire owners at this point. Are we going to get to a point where, I don't know, 20, 30 years down the road from now, like half the sports teams in the world, in the Premier League and Bundesliga, in MLB, in the NBA, and the NFL, they're all owned by like 10 guys? That's the thing that scares me.
That is a scary thought, if I'm honest, and I've never really even thought about that. And that could possibly well be the way of going forward. The thing is with John Henry, it doesn't seem that he cares about what's happening on the pitch. He doesn't seem to be caring whether we win or not. I don't know if he knows our results half the time. I honestly don't think he does watches, because he's landed on his feet with Jurgen Klopp, and that was the best decision he made, is getting in him. If he got another manager in, I don't think we would have won the league. And I think his whole business idea of getting up to the top and then to then progress on other sports industries, it wouldn't have worked at Liverpool, because he wouldn't have had the manager to do so. And right now,
he struck gold with Jurgen. Jurgen's a generational icon.
Exactly that. I mean, and not just Jurgen Klopp either. I think Michael Edwards being the chief executive was a big loss when he went, because he was magic. He was like Harry Potter, in the boardroom. he got 20 plus million for that Dominic Solanke and things like that. He could get fees, and the model of sell to buy worked under Michael Edwards, because he could get those sort of fees in for terrible players, if I'm honest. And because we ain't got Michael Edwards there, not getting the fees of those players, we're letting players on go on the free this summer. We're having to actually spend money this summer if we want to come back, because there's no one in our roster now. I'm going to say roster as an American term. There's no one in our squad that is worth such and such that we can sell to bring in these likes of Bellingham, Caicedo, Mason Mount. We'd have to sell someone like Mohamed Salah. And when we've literally just signed him a new contract, it's ridiculous. We're not going to get over 100 million for him on sale anyway at his age. We'd have to sell someone like Trent Alexander-Arnold to get that sort of money in to bring. So we've left ourselves in a situation where it's do or die this summer. And this is the thing. I think we can come back next season under Jurgen Klopp. It's the perfect manager to come back. We've got a still decent set of players. We like Diaz, Nunez, Salah, Gakpo, Bajcetic.
I love Diaz. His energy is infectious.
Brilliant. Unbelievable. He has potential to be one of the best in the world, as Diaz, when he comes back. But we've still got that sort of foundation there. But the thing that's holding back my optimism is FSG, and if they were willing to put their money where their mouth is in the summer. And it's scary, the fact that even should be coming through, because we've not been spending for 2, 3, 4 seasons now. Our net spend is really low. Like I said, it's below West Ham and Villa. So this money that, if we use the excuse of we can't afford Bellingham because he's that much, we've known how much it is for 2, 3 seasons now, and we haven't spent for 2, 3 seasons anyway. So where's this money gone? It's such a frustrating moment at the moment, being a Liverpool fan, and for you, I don't know how you're going through it being a Boston and a Liverpool fan. I mean, you must be banging your head against the wall with this ownership at the moment.
Yeah, pretty much.
What does the future look like then? Because Henry's said he's coming out and looking for minority investment at Liverpool. Is there any chance of him selling Boston anytime soon, or is he just focused on getting his new franchise up and waiting in the NBA?
It's a critical year for the Red Sox, because Heim is at like a make or break point where I think Henry's probably hoping that Heim is kind of similar to what Jurgen has been for Liverpool, and being that guy who is able to kind of toe that line between like being financially sustainable while also creating success on the field. And that they have a manager, Alex Cora, who's very beloved in Boston as well. But I think that if the Red Sox don't make the playoffs this year, Henry's going to face a lot of heat, because there has been columnists in Boston. Some of the biggest columnists in the city of Boston have been basically in Henry's own newspaper. Dan Shaughnessy, he has been calling Henry cheap for not spending on the team. And that's one of the things that Henry did in Boston was buying the newspaper. And so there's
That
not a
shocked me.
lot
That
of
shocked me. That shocked me. That, to be honest, mate, because the journalists over here close to Liverpool do not call them out. I'm shocked by that.
yeah. And the only reason Shaughnessy has kind of that leeway is that he's an institution. He's a Hall of Fame baseball writer. He's been here for 50 years. If, John Henry fired Dan Shaughnessy, it would be a massive scandal in the city. And it would make his motives extremely clear in a way that would make him, I think, would potentially actually force a sale of the team. In terms of the backlash.
It would expose him if he did that.
It would expose him, 100%. And so I think he's playing a kind of fine wire balancing act. And I think this is why it's such a big year for Chaim Bloom, because I think that he needs the team to win this year and be better than they were last year because they were in last place. And if they don't, he's kind of the perfect scapegoat for Henry to be like, see, I fired Chaim. I still care about this team, even if, just as almost as a friendly gesture to the fans. And so it's a big year for him because I think there's a lot of things about Henry's kind of sports empire that are kind of teetering right now, and things need to kind of flip the right way for him to take things and expand to a global level, I think. Because I think if the Red Sox fan base backlashes to the degree, to a bigger degree than they are now, let's say Red Sox are in last place after this season, and then they don't let go of Chaim. Ticket sales start to go down. TV ratings start to go down. If the original franchise that he's built his entire empire off of starts to lose the fan base, it loses all of the leverage that he has internationally to go out and get another NBA team, or to go out and get an NBA team. It starts to, it's a red flag for everyone else, that he's now who he now owns. And so, so I think it's a really big year for him. I think both on the Liverpool front and on the Red Sox front, which is why I think that there's a sense of panic, I think, happening on both sides on the front office side.
As both a Liverpool fan and a Boston fan, I'm going to ask you the same question, but on both terms. What's your message for Henry? Would you rather him, take the money and run right now? Obviously, I don't know how much did he purchase Boston for and what it's worth now. I think Liverpool he purchased us for £300 million, and they're now worth $4.1 billion, which is £3.3 billion, and that is 10 times the worth. So he's probably done the same with Boston. You probably know the numbers more than I do. Is it time?
Yeah, I mean, it's I think he's not going to. And so, because I think that he sees the vision for the global sports world and these franchise valuations going through the roof, because one day it's not, for the Red Sox, it's not just going to be the United States audience. It's going to be a global audience that's buying Red Sox gear. I think the same is true for Liverpool. Liverpool, I think, is more of a global brand already than the Red Sox are. But I think that there's a vision for people around the world to be fans of these teams and these franchise valuations to go up another, 100% fold. And so I think that with that in mind, because I just don't think he's going to sell the teams, unless like the Red Sox situation and the Liverpool situation completely falls apart, and the ticket sales completely tank, and TV ratings completely tank. And I think as Red Sox fans, as Liverpool fans, we're all a little too masochistic to turn off the TV. Like I think
I've been close this season, mate. I've been close this season, honestly. I have. I mean, we've got tonight. Yeah, I've still got tonight to go through tonight. So
I think the message I have for like Henry and just generally for owners across sports is like, listen to your fans more, because like this community matters. Like obviously there's a business aspect for this of you, but like for way more people, there is a community aspect. Like families have come together, friendships and relationships have been rebuilt around these sports teams. Like people fall in love. Like I literally wrote a story this past week about the parents of the new Yankee shortstop. They literally fell in love because of their fan base, their fandom of the Yankees. Like there's so much that's important for, I think, like humans as a whole, in terms of building community that is like stemmed from being fans of these teams. And I think when you have such a business focused mindset towards it, it makes all of it feel so hollow. Like it makes it, it's like seeing see how the meat gets made too much. Like there has to be like I think it's there's like a I think there's just a responsibility when you're like a sports owner. You have to think about the community if you're gonna like. There's a level I think of like, yes, you're obviously getting into this to make money. That's why people buy, take out these massive loans to buy these teams. But you have to care about the community because if you don't, like, it's number one going to hurt your business investment, but it's also like most importantly, it's going to hurt these communities across like now not just one city in the United States or one city in the UK. It's going to start to be around the world too, especially as the sports world kind of gets global. And so I think that like thinking about how this affects people on like a human level is something that owners need to be doing much more, especially as like we get into a world where like it's possible for me to be on a Liverpool podcast and us like bonding over the same like sports ownership traumas, this is going to be the norm moving forward.
This is why it's come to. I never thought I'd be speaking to a journalist that covers Boston Red Sox about an ownership. Like I said, as a kid, I'd never even thought about the ownership, but it's got to that point where that's what point it's got to. And it is a shame because we're such brilliant clubs here and such brilliant cities that it just feels like it's an opportunity missed, not with just like the clubs themselves succeeding, but opportunity missed there for an ownership to really get to know a city and get to know people from the city and fall in love with the club and fall in love with the city. And I just, like I said, that sort of break away from business to actual human being seems to be not there with John Henry. And that's the reason why, for me, he's already nailed his coffin for Liverpool, because it's not about it. Just he's used everything he's done good for Liverpool seems to be just about profit. Getting a loan from the bank for the training complex, getting a loan from the bank for the new stand. It all increases the value and the market sale of Liverpool in the end. And we shouldn't have to be like that. We should do these things anyway, but then want to succeed on the pitch and want to build around the community. Man City are perfect examples of this. The things they've done around Manchester and around the community, you'll ask any Man City fan or even Manchester United fan, they'll tell you that what they've done around Manchester is amazing. You see them, they had the Amazon Prime documentary with Man City, and we saw the owners that go over there and speak to Pep Guardiola and see how passionate they were about turning this team into the biggest team in the world. And that's what you want. You don't just want an ownership to be there as a business partner. You don't want to be... We're fans. We're not customers. And that's what these sort of business-minded people have in their minds. And I can't see him coming away from that. I can't see him coming away from me and you being customers. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We're always going to be customers to him. And that's why I want an ownership to come in. Obviously, we're not going to want sports washing and things like that. And there's morals in life and there's morals in the way things are run. And there's, you're going to say no to certain owners, but the owners I do want to come in, if I'm praying we do get a new owner, if I'm honest, June. But if the next ownership we have, I just want them to care about the club and I want them to care about the city. I want them us to be the best club that we can possibly be, not financially. You're going to be, even if you succeed on the pitch, though, June, the thing is, if you succeed on the pitch, we're still going to be successful financially, which makes no sense at all. If we continue winning trophies after trophies, our finances are going to go up and up. At the moment, we're going back down on finances in terms of, obviously, revenues, but in terms of global market and commercially, we will go back down again if we continue this route. That's what it makes zero sense to me not wanting to succeed on the pitch, because that increases everything else come with it. Then two little losses in finance for a transfer, for example, will come back anyway through shirt sales, through commercially, through trophy and success. And that's the thing for me that I can't get my head around. Yeah,
I have friends who are Red Sox fans who have said the exact same thing this year. It's the exact same situation.
The similarities between Red Sox and Liverpool are beyond ridiculous. Honestly, it literally. When I was speaking to the Red Sox fan before, and I wrote an article on it, and I felt like I was writing about Liverpool. It just everything seemed to be swapped. Just the players' names were swapped, or the Liverpool Football Club to Boston Red Sox. It felt like I was writing about Liverpool. The exact same scenario is happening, and I do believe John Henry is just not in it for the clubs. He's in it for himself. He's in it, like you said earlier. He's starting up the NBA franchise. He's in it to just increase his profile and his franchises. That's what he's in it for. And for me, that it doesn't sit well with me as a football fan. Over here in the UK, we take pride in our football teams. We take pride of grassroots football, even like your local teams. It's passionate about that team, and when someone comes in with that sort of mindset of, especially for a city like Liverpool who don't like socialists as such, you know what I'm saying? Don't like the whole hierarchy and things like that. It's a hard pill to swallow. Is it the same in Boston for the fans? It's they don't have that same mindset, and they can't relate to John Henry in that way, can they? Because it's just a completely different mindset to the fans.
Yeah, I think it's exactly the same, and that's the thing that I think is wild. It's just it feels just like a complete parallel. I think that when you look at those complete parallels, and it just points to the exact same source. I think that is something that I'll probably spend a lot of time thinking about after we're done recording this.
You're going to be going to bed tonight with lots of things on your mind. We've got a game before anyway, mate. We've got a Liverpool game tonight. What time is it?
I'm excited to see. Yeah.
So
yeah,
that I don't think what John Henry doesn't understand is that game has a lot of effect how I go to bed tonight, because that's a late game for us over here. You might have a bit of time to get over it before you go to sleep, but
it's a 3 p.m. game. It's perfect.
Yeah, I got to bed straight after that, so I'm either going to bed in a good mood or a bad mood tonight. And John Henry won't ever get that, and that's that sort of fan perspective. We're not wanting him to be as an owner, you should become as a fan, really, shouldn't you? As an owner, I know if I owned a business or owned a football, if I owned just a little sports club and a kids' sports club, I'd become a fan. And to me, this is what I don't get about Henry, and I just don't think he's the right person to be in charge of Liverpool or Boston. Mm. Knowing that you guys feel the same way we do and have gone through the exact same things, I know he's not right for both clubs. Just by speaking to you, just by speaking to another Boston fan, just by those conversations alone, he's not right for Boston. It's just as much as not right for Liverpool. And yeah, all we can do is hope. We've got a game tonight, Liverpool against Chelsea. It's the battle of the underperformers tonight. I mean, Chelsea make us look bad at the moment, mate. Honestly, we are bad, but Chelsea making us look worse at the moment. So let's hope. Obviously, this recording's happening now, and it will go out after the Chelsea game. So we don't know the result yet. But I'm glad we've done it before the Chelsea game, because I might be in a different mood tomorrow if we did it tomorrow. But yeah, thanks for coming on, Joon. And it's been an absolute pleasure to hear from your perspective as a Boston fan, as much as it is a Liverpool fan, because at this point I feel sorry for you that you're having to support both clubs, and your
this is like a therapy session between us.
It
felt like a therapy session.
It's honestly, I think we need to do this a bit more often, mate, just for therapy session alone. I think it's been good for my mindset, and I'm hoping you've had a good time coming on here and speaking to a Liverpool fan. It's absolute pleasure having you on, and I look forward to having you on again at some point. And let's see if John Henry changes his. Let's see if John Henry changes his ways. I mean, I think the summer's going to be interesting. If we don't have a good summer transfer wise, I think it's better not to talk to me for the next few months. Just as much as your the fan base is relying on your season this season, I think the fan base is relying on this summer's transfer window with John Henry at Liverpool, because if it don't go right, it's going to turn sour. It's going to turn sour, and I'd love John Henry to come and over here and do that fan talk that he did with you, because I'll be number one in that queue. I'll be number one in that queue, and I'll be waiting outside, clicking.
People pay money to boo him. That's how angry people are.
And this is what they're booing him, and that's it. That he probably cares about baseball than he does more than football.
Yeah,
and
it's crazy. People paid hundreds of dollars. They drove an hour and a half outside of Boston, paid for a hotel, paid for the tickets to the event just to boo him.
I mean, that just sums up. I think that sums up this podcast. That sums up this. People are willing to pay to boo someone. I mean, I think we'll end it there, mate. I couldn't. The perfect ending to the perfect storm there, and the perfect ending to this podcast. Thank you for coming on, June, and I hope it goes well for Boston. But if it doesn't, at least John Henry might move on. I think that.
Yeah, we'll see.
I want this summer transfer window to go well for Liverpool, but then again, I want Henry out. To have both would be perfect, but it's not going to happen, is it?
We'll see what happens. Well, thank you so much for having me on. This has been a really insightful conversation.
Thank you so much for coming on, June, and hopefully speak to you later. And thank you, everyone.
Thanks for having me on.
Subscribe to the channel. Subscribe. Get on the Twitter. We're going to give you content every day. We're going to get this podcast up and running every week, and we're trying to get amazing guests on like June. And thanks for everyone listening, and thanks for June coming on.